Hey guys, I'm Brent.
I'm Lila, and you can find us on the web at www.braintrustlive.com.
Yes.
Quick question for you. Are the Golden Globes tonight?
Yes, they are in. They will start while are still recording this podcast.
Great. I only found out about it because I saw that Mehdi Hassan tweeted that AOC was going to be on his show tonight and that you should watch that instead of the Golden Globes.
And I would agree with that. You should.
And
I
that is
mean,
how I found out about it.
yeah. It's Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, so that'll be something. I'm
Sure.
I'm sort of curious to watch it only just to see how they actually do deal with the drama that the Hollywood Foreign Press finds themselves in right now. I mean, I'm sure
They're
that they
having
will.
their own Oscar So White moment
Right.
this
And
year.
that actually, I think what you just said right there is the thing that, look, do better,
Right.
obviously. But the thing that floors me about that is wasn't the Oscar so white drama at least 2 or 3 years ago now
Yes.
at
Oh,
this point?
yeah. I
So
mean,
where have where have they been? Where's the HFPA been?
to
What
be
have they,
honest, though, like,
they
where has the Oscars been, too? I mean,
Well,
you
I
know,
know, and I'm not saying that the Oscars fixed it because certainly they did not. But I think we found out this week that the HFPA has no black people
yeah.
and hasn't for the 2 decades they've been
Based
it's
on their
insane to me.
previous award giving methodology, I don't
Well,
know that I was so shocked to find out about that.
right. Yeah. So
I I feel like this has been among the least shocking news that I've received. And also, once they decided to include Emily in Paris and not I May Destroy You in their TV, a short list, I was immediately like, oh, I think I know what the problem is. This is whoever decided this is a group of people where there's no people with taste, which means it was all white people.
I mean,
And that
this happens at the Golden Globes all the time. We know that every year we declare that we're not going to care what happens at the Golden
Yeah,
Globes,
it's like a
right? I mean,
fake award
I
show.
don't.
Also, don't care what happens at any award show, but just
Well, right.
this is an especially fake one and always has been.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that it took them 3 years past Oscar So White for us to discover that they're even more problematic because they've been inherently problematic since all of time.
They have. Yes. We should have known when they were nominating Crazy Ex-Girlfriend for a bunch of awards that
Yes,
the nominating crew.
right. Was
I'm more,
not necessarily.
and that's
I
actually a
mean,
good show.
yeah,
But
but
anyway,
it's been a time with them.
yeah,
I only found out this morning though that they were actually happening. I haven't watched any award shows this year because it just seems like why do anything?
sure.
The world isn't happening.
Well,
So
and also
what do I
nobody
need
saw
to?
any movies, so there's
Right, I didn't
that
see any
also.
movies. I don't really care who's winning awards because I don't know who's nominated for awards, and I
Yeah.
don't know who's in public, so I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Instead, I have been breathlessly following the drama at CPAC because
Right. Instead of following the Golden Globes, you've been following the Golden Idol.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah. I like CPAC a lot for one reason, which is that they defy parody every year. Every year they make fun of themselves better than any comedian ever could, and every year they don't know that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
this year was no exception. Obviously, they went all in on being a parody of themselves because this is Donald Trump's Republican Party, and they were already a parody of themselves. But CPAC always has a little something extra, I think, that really puts them over the edge because they lack a certain extra kind of taste that is just the most basic kind of taste that a person could have.
Yeah.
They're sort of there in defiance of taste. So they really have to put in the extra work. So there was that hilarious Trump Golden Idol statue.
I mean,
The stage is shaped like a Nazi symbol.
yep.
Of course. Of course.
Right.
There has been before we get into what anyone has said, there's been some epically bad dancing that has just been
I
notable.
mean,
Listen, you got a group of white supremacists together in any context, you're going to find bad dancing. That's
yeah,
how
we
things
know.
go.
You've watched the RNC before. I mean,
Right.
this year's was a little bit different, but you know that you get this many
That's a
white people in a room, and at least the the RNC, the dancing is bad. But more at the RNC, it's more just sort of mistimed clapping, really.
yes. They do
Than
not
than
have
it
good
is
rhythm at the
dan-
RNC.
but at the but at CPAC they really go for it.
Yeah.
Um,
CPAC is
dancing.
for the more enthusiastic members of the party, and they express that enthusiasm via full body movements, which I mean, that it has involved, like, there was a Roger Stone situation that I don't want to comment on further. There
always is.
was a Kimberly Guilfoyle situation that I don't know what to say about, but it was as if you can imagine Kimberly Guilfoyle dancing in the model of that supercut that Donald Trump put out of himself dancing. It was sort of like that. It was like if Kimberly Guilfoyle was dancing like Donald Trump, and it just went on for 100 years. It was
Yeah.
it was like it was a century of Kimberly Guilfoyle dancing like Donald Trump, and it was horrifying.
Yeah.
And that I think that maybe if you are going to join a collection of white supremacists, that one of the things you should agree to
All
give
agree
up
to.
for your principles is dancing, because
It's got to be in the bylaws or something.
you've specifically disinvited anyone who could possibly have rhythm to your gathering. So just know to yourself that dancing is not an activity that is okay to pursue as a gathering of white supremacists. You have to just know that. You can't,
Yeah.
I mean, the lack of self-awareness has been really discouraging.
Yeah.
This obviously is not to say that their speeches weren't also insane and problematic. So,
Or like only line or square dance, maybe.
right. Yeah.
Right. Like
Listen, a line dance.
pick a dance that you can do.
Pick a dance where someone tells you what to do in the dance so you don't have to think about it. Don't be left to your own devices on a dance floor or on a stage. Don't be on a stage dancing, first of all. No. Be on a floor dancing, and only be dancing in groups. Do not dance alone. In any case,
Oh man.
Trump spoke tonight. He came out and kissed an American flag, as you do when you're a patriot.
Wasn't it CPAC where he like gave the flag a hug also?
Yes.
Or was that like at the NRA?
No, I think that he did. Well, I think he's done it more than once, but I think the first time that we remember him doing it was from CPAC.
Yeah, I think so too.
He does love to hug a flag, and I don't
Yeah.
think you're supposed to do that
No,
with
I don't think
flags,
you are.
right? You're not supposed to assault flags.
No.
I mean, I'm not a flag expert. I don't know how you're supposed to fold a flag. I don't salute the flag. Sure. At that Joe Biden rally, I had my nose on a flag. I don't think that's how you're supposed to pledge to it. But I know that you're probably not supposed to kiss and hug them. Yeah. But you're not supposed to do that with women you don't know either, and yet here we are. He in the course of it was a very like Trump-esque speech.
Sure.
Was disappointed because they released the speech beforehand, I think so that he wouldn't go off script. And I love it when he goes off script, and I hate it when he gives prepared remarks, because him going off script is good entertainment, and I defy anyone to tell me that that's not the case. No, exactly. Like, what credibility is he trying to rescue here? Like, say whatever, like, once your written speech is just lies, say whatever crazy shit came to your head and make it entertaining.
Right. Also, you're going to prison soon anyway. So like,
so
go
out with a bang. Exactly. Yeah. He's like out there. He's not accepting the election results. He's claiming he's going to run again in 2024. He accused Joe Biden of being everything that he is. He said he was anti-science and anti-women and the worst president ever and whatnot. Sure. My favorite line from the speech was that he claimed that we had sold America's children out to teachers unions, which, I mean, try to work that one out in your head. He's forgotten about the coup, so
yeah, sure.
We I guess should forget about it too if we want to continue with the glorious future that he promised. He did tell people to go get the vaccine, which is great, and the only helpful thing that he did in his entire 90 minutes
well, that's
of
the
just
thing,
yammering.
Like, right. He has found himself in such a weird place because like he wants credit for that vaccine, right? And like I understand, because like that is really sort of like one of the only things that I think like history may vaguely tie to him. You know,
that's
just
not like that's not awful.
That's not awful because of Operation Warp Speed, right? And so, but he is probably telling it to a room full of people who think that Bill Gates invented it and that it's going to change their DNA and turn them into lizard people. So like, it's such he has found himself in this really confounding place with the vaccine where he really wants to tell everybody he possibly can about it, but none of the people that he's telling want to hear about it.
Also, it's hard because he doesn't want to admit that COVID is real, but he also both got COVID and wants credit for the vaccine, and also was claiming the Democrats.
Died from it.
Right. He's also claiming the Democrats were using COVID to steal the election. So he doesn't seem to know where he stands on the realness of COVID, but that also makes it complicated to convince people to get the vaccine you want credit for. Because if COVID's not real, who needs a vaccine for it?
Yeah.
And if COVID is real, then why didn't you do anything else besides potentially have the idea of having a vaccine?
Yeah.
He did say he wants to punish the tech companies that blocked him with sanctions. So figure that out.
Who's sanctioning them?
Hard to know. The most important part of CPAC happened early on, and it was the most glorious rendition of the national anthem I think anyone could have possibly ever heard.
Listen, I have so many things to say about this. For starters, just a word to the wise, to you, young singers out there. She looked like a potentially lovely young lady, but also maybe not because she's singing.
She was at CPAC,
she might
so
be awful.
it's right.
But if you think to yourself at any moment in your life that it might be good exposure for you or a good opportunity for you as a young singer to get out there in front of a bunch of people and sing the national anthem, immediately think the other way.
Say no.
Do not do it.
Say no.
Like on some level, like she made a bad decision, and she certainly gave a terrible performance that will be studied, I think, by music theorists for generations, really, because
it has some really interesting key changes.
She discovered some things that I think have been previously undiscovered in all of music history. So it's definitely worth listening to. But like, you don't sing the national anthem in front of people. I am a singer. If somebody offered me $1 million to sing it in front of one stranger right now that had a recording device, that's a no.
They say no.
It's just a no. And I would do better than she did, but I would still say no.
I also would caution any singer, and I'm not a singer, I'm just a person with ears. I would caution any singer to especially say no if you have been asked to sing the national anthem a cappella. Because it was a challenge to get back to the right key. Like sometimes, listen, you sing and you're a little flat and that sucks and you got to figure that out and you just move on. If you're accompanied, though, you can find the key again. Without accompaniment, you have lost the key permanently much of the time. And that was unfortunately what occurred here.
Certainly,
there was a permanent key lossage.
Certainly, if you don't have very good pitch center, then you'll never find it again.
There are people.
Clearly, she did not. Yeah, somebody might.
There are people out there who have perfect pitch. There are people out there, and you can say sing C, and they can just sing C. Like, and those people, I don't think are having the problem that she faced in this moment. However, and I do wonder with like people who go off key this way. Like I once in junior high school had to audition for a musical that my junior high school was putting on. And I'm not a singer, but I did, I played the piano for a very long time. I definitely can hear if I'm off key, and I went off key and I could hear myself being off key, and I just thought like, I don't know what to do because now do I admit that I was in the wrong key and change keys again, or do I commit to the key? Right. Do I just commit to the new key? I don't feel like that was the situation she was in, because I feel like she went into many keys at different times.
She committed to all of the keys. Instead of committing to one, she was like, I'm just going to hit them all on the way down, basically. If this thing is going to burn, then it's really...
That's because the first time she hit a note, like she hit a note that was kind of, I think she hit a flat note or something, like very early, and I was like, ooh. But then she got back, and I was like, okay, she just hit a wrong note, life goes on. And
but
then
she either
it started to grow.
Know. Right. That's why I said I sent it to a few people, and I was like, watch the end, right? Because it's a progression of sorts.
Yes.
And at one point, like when she hits the big note at the end that everybody always really, it's the big money note, the whole thing, she held it forever and really warbled for quite some time, like on that big money note. And like a few people clapped, like, it's the
well, to be polite.
But she was like, so she either didn't know that it had gone south, or she was like, this is how I'm going to salvage it here at the end. Right?
It has a lot of qualities. It's a performance with many qualities, and
it's there. And I don't know if I want to give it this much credit or not, but it's like, it's competing with the Fergie national anthem from the NBA All-Star game, where she tried to really sex it up. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Again, don't be singing this.
Just don't agree.
It's a hard song to sing. don't do it.
There's a reason that every single time there's the Super Bowl, you see one of 3 people invited to sing the national anthem.
Right.
That's the most public national anthem singing that happens in America every year. And
It's
Lady
only people who are
Gaga
known
or somebody,
specifically for quality singing abilities.
right, does it every year for reasons.
Yeah.
She's the only person who agrees to do that. Everyone else knows what they know. That's
Yeah.
in any case.
Yeah.
It was perfect for the brand of patriotism they were selling at CPAC. And that's,
Right.
I think, the most important thing.
Yeah.
We are getting inches closer to having a stimulus package. I wouldn't say feet or miles closer, but inches for sure. The House did
We are-
approve something that
They
is
did
not going to
approve
be what the
it.
Senate
It's like-
approves.
It's one of those things where, like, back in like January or whatever, when they were talking about like getting started on this, or I guess like right after the inauguration or whatever, you and I were flabbergasted that they were talking about like trying to get it done before the unemployment ran out, which was like in the middle of March.
Months.
So, but you know what? They put that middle of March date out there, and they are really slowly just snailing their way to it.
They thought to themselves, we are going to do what any person writing a term paper would do. And we are going to give ourselves a hard deadline. And then 2 weeks before, we're going to commence work, but we're not going to really do anything until the night of. We're going to go to the library 2 weeks before to research, but we'll actually just look at TikTok. And then the night before, that's when the money votes happen.
Yeah.
So the House has approved a version of Biden's $1.9 trillion plan.
Right.
They approved it along party lines minus 2 Democrats who are nonsense people. I
feel like we should name them though, because let
Oh,
people
for
should
sure.
know their names. Oregon's Kurt Schrader and Maine's Jared Gold.
Right.
So-
Both nonsense. Both complaining that it had too many non-pandemic things how dare we spend money on people? I would also contend that every single time that someone tells you that a kind of spending that will go to people is not pandemic related, you can tell them that it is actually people who need help in a pandemic. So all people related spending is in fact pandemic related.
That's it.
Like with the minimum wage in particular, I've been like, this is an issue that disproportionately affects the exact same groups of people that are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So like, yeah, this is pandemic related. We don't need to talk about it more. In any case, 0 Republicans back this because they know how to deliver a no vote better than anyone. Here's what it includes. The $1,400 stimulus checks that are not $2,000.
Right.
That
They left it at the same levels. They didn't bring
Yes,
it down to $50,000.
people who make
which is
under
great.
75K
Yeah.
and then it disappears up to 100K.
Yeah.
The $400 boost to unemployment benefits. I like that we're pretending now that that's just a generous offer when we had $600 1 year ago, specifically for the same cause, and that is like
And
what saved the
employment
economy.
is
It's
looking
not
so
back.
much better.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. They're doing a big increase in the child tax credit, which is great. I think the maximum credit for children under 6 is going to be $3,600, which is way higher. It's like I think twice what it's been. So that's great. Bunch of money for small businesses, money for states to like do their vaccine and testing stuff, money for schools, for colleges so that they can do safety, take safety precautions. There's $30 billion in there for rental assistance. There is an increase in the Obamacare tax credits because apparently the way that we've chosen to deal with this huge healthcare crisis is not to rethink our healthcare system, but to just provide bigger tax credits to people who can't afford plans or to use those plans once they have them. But whatever, a conversation for another day. And then the big thing that it includes is it raises the minimum wage to $15. More on that in a second. But first, House leaders already mad that it just includes money for things. I mean, the GOP leaders, it's just angry that it's not just 100% money that's going directly to, I don't know, some kind of business corporate COVID relief thing or something.
Yeah. Also, now that we're in a Democratic presidency, we're very concerned about the deficit.
Yes. Oh, the deficit is such a problem when someone else is in power.
Right.
So I can imagine how concerned they are about it and how genuine their concern is.
Yeah.
The Senate is going to take up the bill next week, but they ran afoul of certain rule that is a fake rule that they also made up. So I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So obviously there's going to be two different versions of this bill because of what we're about to tell you. And so they're going to have to go to reconciliation, which is why it's going to take till March, even though you would think that they could easily pass this bill anytime. The Senate parliamentarian, who is the non-elected person who decides how the Senate rules are going to be applied, decided that they could not use reconciliation, which is how they pass budget-related things with 51 votes instead of 60 votes, to increase the minimum wage to $15. So those guidelines, by the way, were made up by the Senate, and all of the rules are made up by the Senate, and the parliamentarian is serving at the will of the Senate. So all of this is like a made-up crisis that we could easily not have, but they chose to have it because there's nothing Biden likes better than a roadblock that prevents him from having to take action on something. So they've committed wholeheartedly to the roadblock premise, even though the Republicans have done just this and replaced the Senate parliamentarian in the past when they really didn't like the rules.
They cared a lot about this, then there's ways that they could get around this, which we sort of talked about last week. But they don't care enough about it, so they're not going to bother.
And they're in an awkward bind because Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, despite 50% of those being people who have in the past supported a $15 an hour minimum wage, don't want to raise the minimum wage because of reasons. Or not reasons.
I think there was like a hilarious, like, I think Manchin and Sinema were like, let's do $11 or something. And then I think even some Republicans, wasn't it like Romney and what's his name?
Yeah, there's a $10 plan.
Released a plan, but then also like made it tied to like checking immigration, using E-Verify to check immigration status. Hilariously, their plan was for a lower wage than what Arkansas has already mandated in the state, which is where Tom Cotton is from, who wrote that bill. So like, there's a lot of other.
Well, this is the same
out
with
there for this, but.
This is the same with Kristen Sinema because they have already raised the minimum wage in Arizona, and it was this year or last year. I mean, her own voters that just recently, have had to make a decision about this, voted to raise the minimum wage. And so the fact that she is against it is very curious because she is both a Democrat and also a person from a state where a vast majority of people want to raise the minimum wage. And then for some reason is also a person who had said years ago that she was in favor of it and then had to take it back. And so that's a real curious one. But in any case, it's likely that the Senate is going to strip this out of their bill, and that way they can use reconciliation to pass it. Bernie Sanders is like on the case of making sure that every single thing they do can be done through reconciliation, which is why having him as the head of the budget committee is really a top-notch situation for us to find ourselves in. But he is also very suspect of this parliamentarian ruling that claims that they cannot use this to raise the minimum wage. And specifically noted, so the rule that allows them to, the rule that they're using to justify not allowing the $15 an hour minimum wage is the Byrd Rule, which prohibits extraneous measures from being part of the budget process. But they have included things in the past, such as drilling for oil in the Arctic, in budget reconciliation legislation. Right. So Sanders has been sort of like, I don't see why this, an economic measure, is not budget reconciliation. But how is it not budget related? Right. Is not and something that would have a major budgetary impact, but somehow like drilling for oil, totally fine. Yeah. So they're looking at plan Bs. They're looking at some alternatives.
Some options.
One of them, Ron Wyden and Bernie Sanders are working on this together. And this is like, the reason that it's great to have Bernie Sanders on the budget committee is because what Bernie Sanders is really good at doing is finding a sneaky way to do something that the big guns would not let him do. Like,
this is why he was the amendment king when he was, well, I mean, he's still in Congress, but like this is his expertise here, is getting something that he wants by some either weird amendment or some backdoor way of doing it.
Or like having someone crazy like Mike Lee be involved in it. Like he can find a crazy person to sponsor a good idea with him sometimes. Like he finds a way to, this is his jam. So there are a few things floating around. One is him and Ron Wyden are proposing adding language that would penalize corporations for not paying $15 an hour in the tax code. And they would basically impose a 5% tax on payrolls for workers, on the corporation's payroll tax, for any workers that receive less than $15 an hour, and that would rise over time And then maybe would do income tax credits for small businesses that agree to pay their employees higher, wages and things like that. They want to make sure that obviously there are safeguards so that labor doesn't get outsourced. So there would have to be penalties for, outsourcing those jobs as well, because obviously that's what evil corporations would do if they had to pay living wages, is then just find a sneaky way to not pay a living wage elsewhere. But it's so curious because, first of all, Kamala Harris can overrule the parliamentarians' decision, just FYI. Like, that's a thing that she can do. And the White House has just said they're not going to because they don't like to do things, because they're chicken shit. They could fire the parliamentarian, which, as we said, the Republicans have already done. And they're instead going to essentially back themselves into a corner where they have to either work with Republicans who are coming up with like insano ideas to pair with this, or not get it. It's crazy. Also, the Republican $10 plan was fucking cruel because it basically it requires employers to run all their employees through E-Verify so that they can bar undocumented immigrants from, making wages. But like, it doesn't offer any, like, that's just like an expensive program that doesn't offer any like marginal benefit to anyone. It's just mean to people, but it's not like those are like great jobs that are going to go to other people. Like, these are already the jobs that are not paying $10 an hour. Like,
well, and also $10 an hour, like, fuck off. I mean, the reason that Arkansas itself is more than $10 is because like $10 is also starvation wage. It's been $7.25 for a fucking decade. As you noted somewhere on your notes here, it should be something like 24. So like, the idea that you would raise it to 10 is
insulting,
insanity,
and also meaningless to the constituents of Tom Cotton, because Arkansas is 11. So not worth the trouble. In any case, this is, I think, something that Sanders has actually addressed in the past with certain corporations, because if the reason that Amazon ended up making that big announcement that they were going to pay a minimum of $15 an hour, and I know they found sneaky ways to get around it or whatever, was literally because Sanders was like, I'm going to tax them then. And so he introduced a bill called the Stop Bezos Act that was just going to make them essentially tax them to recoup whatever their low-wage employees were using as federal benefits. So, obviously a lot of employees at places like Walmart and Amazon qualify for food assistance and Medicaid and like a bunch of other federal programs. We pay for those programs. It would be one thing, like, we should absolutely pay for those programs for people who are unable to work, who are in some kind of other difficult situation, but like, a giant corporation we should not allow a giant corporation to use us to subsidize their low wages. So like, Amazon should be paying their employees enough so that we, the American people, don't have to subsidize that wage.
And that is something that seems like you really could sell some Republicans on, right?
Yes. You would think that some of these, I don't know, I mean, you would think some of these wackadoodle Republicans who like have really like confusing, it feels like something that a Republican that likes to make trouble could get behind.
Right.
You know how we're always having like weird Republicans who are both fomenting revolution and also like trying to get us bigger pay, bigger checks from the government, like the Josh Hawleys of the world. Like, if we're going to let him stay in Congress, let's make him do something about this. Like,
exactly.
But also, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, get rid of the filibuster.
Yes, that's enough. Progressives in the House have been really hitting on that this week, and I know Sanders would like to do the same thing. But that's the solve here.
Yeah, and that's other areas where Joe Biden is taking action are less great areas. So while he is not busy trying to override the Senate parliamentarians so that we can raise the minimum wage, a move that would disproportionately impact women and people of color all over America in a time of great strife for those groups in particular, we are instead using this time to order airstrikes on Syria that are not authorized by anyone in Congress.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
that's fun.
Once you've done something that Tim Kaine doesn't approve of,
I mean,
you mucked up.
Right. Like, go home immediately. If Tim Kaine is mad at you about a policy that he felt was too far to the right, then you know that you're in a quagmire. But this is actually something that's been a sort of growing consensus because of the Trump era. And I can see exactly what's going to happen here. For years, we've been allowing the president to wage war without congressional approval, and we've just been sort of pretending.
This was part of the war on terror. This goes back to
the Korean War
Bush.
Was not authorized by Congress. The Vietnam War was not authorized by Congress. It's something we've actually been doing for longer. That Bush used it, I think, in the broadest possible context, where he got congressional approval to go after Al Qaeda and used it to go to war with the entire Middle East. And any anti-terror activity is now justified under that resolution. That
I think
obviously
that's how we're doing this.
That's how we're doing this,
yes.
exactly.
Right, yeah.
But for a long time, we've been essentially Congress has been abdicating the responsibility to declare war.
Sure.
That was very specifically assigned to them in the Constitution.
And we don't pay for those, by the way, if we're concerned about the deficit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. We're not raising taxes to pay for war, by the way.
No. We're, in any case.
We're just paying for it. We're just finding the money.
We just find the money. Right. The money is always there for war.
Yeah. Anyway.
So we have a long tradition of being very permissive to the president when it comes to acts of war. And in the Trump era, I think everyone was kind of like, oh, this is why we gave Congress the right to wage war, because the president could be insane. And if the president's insane, then that's one unilateral insane person who we have abdicated all of this responsibility to, and that person might not have good ideas. Just an idea. Now, look, could they have known that about George Bush, a person with bad ideas? Maybe, but they chose not to know that. In any case, so in the last couple years, there's been a real push on the congressional side to curb some of that permissiveness because, and Tim Kaine has really been at the forefront of that. To be fair to Tim Kaine, the only time I want to be fair to Tim Kaine.
Sure, it is.
Because
but other people have also I mean, it's just and other moderates too. I mean, Mark Warner has talked about this before. I mean, this isn't just
something. There's a broad consensus.
Crazies that are trying to get the presidents to stop just unilaterally bombing.
There's a broad consensus about this, specifically to avoid situations like what we're in right now, where the president went and used this sort of broad authority, claiming it was self-defense, to just drop some bombs in Syria, and everyone in Congress was like, what? Why? Yeah. And this is, by the way, action. Trump has also done this, and a lot of these same people who are involved in the Biden administration were incredibly critical of Trump for doing this.
No.
So in 2017, he did this, and Kamala Harris was against it. Jen Psaki was criticizing it on Twitter. This is an action that no matter who takes it is not good.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm hoping a conversation that we won't forget to continue, just because the president seems like a more one of their guys kind of person. Because I think part of it is that they gave broad authority to people like George Bush because he was part of their community. So they inherently, I don't know why they would inherently trust George Bush. They inherently weirdly trusted Dick Cheney because they knew him. And when Trump came about, everyone was like, oh, wait a minute. We don't know these people. They're not part of us. And so we have to suddenly remember that we have this authority. But Joe Biden also should not have this authority.
No.
So we should also make sure that, Congress is being, at the very least, consulted about actions of war.
I think that while Biden is the president and with Democrats controlling both the House and the Senate, this might actually be a time when they could do it, because I think the Republicans, and this is disingenuous of them, but would probably be willing to vote for it just only because they don't want a Democrat to be able to do it. And normally I would say I don't really feel great about that, but in this instance, I
feel great about limiting any president's ability to wage war.
Yeah, so if it needs Tim Kaine and Bernie Sanders to join with 50 Republicans, then I'm fucking fine with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is something that there's actually been broad consensus on doing nothing.
I think so too. It's
for
actually
a long time. And I think that has changed. Some of these fools were not talking about this issue under George Bush. None of these fools were talking about this under Barack Obama. But these were all actions that were being taken by those presidents as well.
Yeah.
It's just that Donald Trump spooked them because they were like, wait a minute, should a lunatic have the unilateral ability to declare war? And I would contend that even non-lunatics shouldn't have that unilateral ability.
Yes.
But they couldn't really see past themselves on that.
Yeah.
So in any case, we're bombing Syria, but we don't care much about Saudi Arabia. They're murdering Americans, but whatever.
Listen, this is crazy because
Yeah.
we found out this week what we already knew. This was another instance that you like to talk about where, like, use your imagination. Of course, we knew this. Like, we didn't need an intelligence report to
Right.
tell us that it was the Saudi crown prince who did indeed order the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. But we found out for sure that that was the case this week. So
Right.
great. Now we can all move on with our life. And you would think that Joe
Do
Biden,
something.
a man who took a very hard stance during the campaign, who said, what did he say? Where's this quote from him? Uh, I don't remember. But during the campaign, he said, I thought I had it
Yeah.
in here. I don't know. Oh, no,
No.
wait, no, here it is. Yeah, he said that he said that he was going to hold senior Saudi leaders accountable for Khashoggi's death, and he called the kingdom's leadership a pariah,
Yeah.
and he said that they had very little redeeming social value.
That's right.
So in response to this, the White House shrugged its shoulders.
Did nothing.
They
And
literally
listen,
did nothing.
I
And
am
they
not
got
a
called
person.
out for it.
Yes, and I was going to say I'm not a person who I want them to pursue one of two aims here. I want them to either decide they're doing nothing about any of this stuff because they would like to focus all of their energy and attention on solving issues domestically, and we could stop trying to police the entire world. And also, we should maybe make some kind of statement that the Saudis shouldn't kill Americans, obviously. But like, I don't think that on the same week you can decide to bomb Syria. I think you're either somebody who's actively involved in protecting American interests or you're not. And if you think that American interests are just like army bases and oil reserves and they are not American citizens, then you are thinking wrong about things. You are having wrong thoughts.
Right. I agree. We should mention, just because both of us keep saying we're bombing Syria, we're not really technically bombing Syria.
No.
I think we're bombing like some Iranian targets who like also sent a
Yeah.
like maybe bombed like an American target or something like that. Like
It's
we're not
in
bombing the
Easter-
country of
We're
not
bombing
the country
in
of
Syria. Right.
Yes.
We're
I feel
bombing
like
in-
you and I have both said it, and I was like,
Yes.
people are going to think that we're at war with
Right.
Syria.
We're not
currently,
at war
which
with
we are not.
Syria. What we are doing, though, is a thing that people don't like you to do in their territory, which is electing
Right,
to
exactly.
unilaterally, without their involvement,
Right.
bomb
We
people
s- right.
inside of their borders.
Right. We still are bombing Syria.
Right. We are literally
We're
bombing
just not
Syria.
bombing
We are
the
not.
government of Syria.
Right. We are bombing
right.
Iranian targets in Syria, but it is Syria
Yeah.
isn't going to love that in the same way that if people started bombing the Syrian embassy in DC, that would be, I think, problematic for both Syria and also us.
Right. But in terms of Saudi Arabia, all that they did this week in response to this report coming out was they sanctioned the Crown Prince's security detail. And then they also imposed some visa sanctions and nothing else. And Jen Psaki got pressed about it because they were like, for real? Like, that's
Right.
the plan?
Well, they
And
were
she
talking
said,
all this shit during the election. You
I
can't be
know.
talking shit during the
Right.
election and then do nothing.
Yeah, so she said, we believe there's more effective ways to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and also to leave room to work with the Saudis on areas where there's mutual agreement. And let me be very clear to you.
Diplomacy.
Right. Let me tell you what the mutual agreement with Saudi Arabia is. The
Yeah.
mutual agreement is that the Saudis agree that they won't be punished, and the U.S. agrees that the Saudis will continue to be the top purchaser of U.S. weapons manufacturers.
That's right. Yeah, the interests that we're protecting here are the arms
Billions of
trading
dollars that they
interests.
are sending us every year.
Yeah, that's right. So, Khashoggi can just know that he was sacrificed to the altar of arms dealing.
Yeah.
I guess, because I feel like this is exactly what people dislike about foreign policy under every leader, and I do feel like under Trump it was so chaotic that we didn't pay attention to this kind of stuff because no one
Right.
really knew what our policy
And he was
towards
very
anything.
cozy with the Saudis. Like, he did nothing also because, like, we
of
knew
course.
that it was the Saudi crown prince during Trump. It was just the official statement that we got now. But, like,
Exactly.
he also did nothing.
No, the fact that it's more that we didn't know what he was up to because none of it made sense. That we didn't have this kind of clear corruption in the way that we do with Democrats and Republicans that are from a more traditional ilk, where they will take two contradictory actions in 1 week that indicate that we have decided to exercise muscular foreign policy and then also roll over for people that want to buy our weapons.
Right.
And that's been the tradition forever. And with Trump, you just weren't sure if there were traditions anymore, so you just didn't think in these terms. But this kind of, sort of seemingly conflicted activity is exactly what people hated about U.S. foreign policy before Trump, and it is why many of them got pulled into the Trump apparatus. Because this was something that, even though obviously nothing he did matched with anything he said, so I'm not claiming that this was a smart move for them in the long run or anything, but like him, going on about how we were busy trying to spend all of our money going to war elsewhere, and then we weren't, actually taking on our enemies, as he was always naming enemies and then claiming it was going to be tough on them and then doing nothing, but whatever. Like, this left the opening for him to use that rhetoric to like go and try to get a bunch of people to vote for white supremacy. Like, I feel like I, as a Democrat and just like as a person in America, have a sense that one thing that Americans really want, especially when we're dealing with the Middle East, is some fucking like logic and common sense when it comes to what our foreign policy approach is there, and also just like a lighter hand.
Right.
And not just a light hand when it comes to protecting arms purchasers, but like a lighter hand when it comes to protecting people. So we will sacrifice our own people for Saudi Arabia, but we're happy to sacrifice plenty of people in the Middle East who are just regular people all the time. Like, I think that dissonance is something that has been problematic for both parties for a long time, and Trump was able to kind of transcend it just because he was so illogical and crazy. And and I think that people aren't going to be happy to be pulled back down into it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I said it in many words and over many minutes, but that was ultimately my point. We did have a little scare earlier this week when it looked like Deb Haaland might not get the votes to be Interior Secretary, and being that she's one of maybe 2 cabinet picks that I'm excited about, I was personally offended.
I know.
But Joe Manchin then said that he would vote for her, and now we're back to square one.
Since we now have to be watching Joe Manchin's every fucking move, which is annoying. I knew it was going to happen though, so like I'm not surprised. But like you really have to. We need a tracker on Joe Manchin.
You got to watch that guy.
You got to watch him, and especially after he said that he was going to vote against Neera Tanden, which we were obviously in favor of. But apparently, Republicans were planning to make Deb Haaland their next target because of her. Because she doesn't like fossil fuels. Yeah. And she's going to be the Interior Secretary. So
because she's
Joe
like
Manchin,
a vaguely principled person, mostly.
Right, exactly. And Joe Manchin being just as much a lover of fossil fuels as all of the other 50 Republicans, more than most of them probably.
Many more,
Virginia, and a man who wants to continue to burn all of Earth's coal at the fastest rate possible. We were scared that maybe there would be a Deb Haaland issue. But apparently there's not going to be, which almost seems weird to me, to be perfectly frank.
I truly, I'm so fascinated that Neera Tanden, the person that I too wanted to be held up, is the one getting held up, and that that Deb Haaland, who was someone I was fairly excited about, is the one skating by. Like, I don't understand.
I don't know what Joe
Manchin's plan is right now.
Right, because as glad as I am that he is going to vote for Deb Haaland, I feel like if he was voting in, and I don't want to make it sound like voting against Deb Haaland is not in the interest of the people of West Virginia, but I feel like if he was really doing this on some sort of like principled, like the people of my state, whatever, I feel like what he should have maybe done is vote for Neera Tanden and not for Deb Haaland. I'm glad he did it just personally the way that he did, but
I think it's what I said last week. I think his entire electorate is on fringes. It's not centrist. Neera Tanden is centrist, and she's cozy with Wall Street, and she's cozy with all of the people that people on fringes hate. And people on both fringes hate those people. It's not just the left that hates those people. The right hates Wall Street too. They are expressing it in, I would contend, an eccentric and wrong-headed manner. But that sort of Tea Party, kind of activist right, they also really hate Wall Street. They really hate the tyranny of corporations as well. So I think that Joe Manchin exists in a world where he has to sort of pay lip service to like the far left and right of the spectrum, and the middle is actually what's most dangerous for him, which is funny because he's in the middle. But his middleness is very extreme if you think about it. He doesn't necessarily ask for the most moderate version of a policy proposal. He nixes good ideas entirely. He doesn't compromise always. He nixes good ideas, or he supports bad ideas, but he's not like a person who's like, let's all just get along. he wants to either work with Republicans and be a loony, or he wants to work with Democrats and he'll play ball. But he doesn't do the thing that a lot of moderate Democrats do, where it all seems like a front for Wall Street. It's a front for fossil fuels in his case, for sure. But it's not the sort of broad corporate consensus front that a lot of the other moderates are working with.
Yeah.
And so I think that Neera Tanden actually is more dangerous for him, because Neera Tanden is hated by everyone on the fringes. And it's the center that's trying to convince us she's this great, wonderful person. But no one on the fringes wants to see her be elected or to be appointed. And Deb Haaland is loved on the left. And the right can be mad about it, but there is not the same consensus among his electorate on her.
Yeah. And also, this is the thing about all cabinet secretaries to a degree. I mean, I understand they are running, giant departments, but also they have to stick with the overall policy of like whoever the president is, who's like, because, it's not necessarily all good news with Deb Haaland as much as we like her, but like apparently the reason that Manchin said that he is going to vote for her is because, this is a quote, in her confirmation hearing, she reiterated the position of the Biden administration that our country will continue to use fossil fuels for years to come, even as we transition to a cleaner energy future through innovation, not elimination. So like the reason that he's voting for her is because at her hearing, Deb Haaland had to get up there and talk about how great and wonderful fossil fuels were going to be. And like, she doesn't actually think that, but like she's playing the game because she's becoming a part of the administration, and the administration is also a lover of fossil fuels. So
I would also note that she's not super progressive. She was a Warren surrogate, so that's why we think of her as being super progressive.
Yeah.
But she was not, and so her record doesn't actually support the kind of crazed rhetoric we're seeing coming out of the Republican Party, where they're calling her Kennedy is really killing it these days with wackadoodle things to say. He told reporters, "I'm not impressed with what I've seen so far. I think she's a radical. I think she's a neo-socialist left of Lenin whack job."
Yes.
I hope to be described as that one day. I hope that someone describes, I feel like I could fit the bill there. I think
I'll put it on your tombstone.
I want that on my tombstone, but I want someone to say it to me before I die too, so that I know it'll make it onto my tombstone. I don't want to die not knowing if that will be on my tombstone. She was a neo-socialist left of Lenin whack job, R.I.P. Mm-hmm. That's what I want my tombstone to say. Yeah. But like Deb Haaland's record does not support that assertion. So
no, it doesn't.
Like there's no reason really for moderates to be concerned about her.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're pissed with Biden this week. I don't know if you've noticed, and we knew that it would start.
We were last week too.
We're pissed with him most weeks, but we're extra pissed with him this week because he's had there's been a confluence of bad ideas this week that just sort of like reminded us about all the annoying parts of having someone like Biden be the president.
Yeah.
And listen, CPAC also reminds us why we don't want Donald Trump to be the president. So I'm not suggesting I would rather have Trump.
To go back to what we had.
Right. I'm just claiming that Joe Biden continues to disappoint me in many ways and will for years to come.
Continued advocacy for something better in the future
that's right.
we could have if we wanted.
That's right. If we tried at all.
Right.
Because we are reopening more facilities for migrant children so that we can put them in new cages, I guess. And we are, in particular, reopening for-profit facilities to do this.
That's what really got me, because, there's been an uptick at the border, and, you have to, the way that we treat them is what's important, right? And I understand that, having more facilities to a degree until you figure out whatever it is your new policy and how you're going to handle the border, you need places to put people, and children, having more of them means that they are also less crowded. So I can understand potentially you might be able to convince me on maybe just why
a temporary
a couple more of them, while you get your immigration shit figured out. There is an immigration bill in the House already. I think it's a top priority. I understand, but we've already this can't be for-profit facilities. That can't be what we're doing. We've already decided that we're not doing for-profit prisons. I think even this administration, you can't that. This is not the answer. And by the way, I didn't want it to make it seem like I think that opening these is a good idea. I'm just saying there might be a way that you could say, this is why I'm doing this. And I might be well, okay, we have to fix it.
Right.
at some point, obviously, right? Like this isn't the permanent solution, just having more facilities at the border to
Right.
throw people in. But like the
Right. If
for-profit thing really gets in my craw.
Yeah. No, I think also just such a bad look anyway because there's like so many layers of like symbolically problematic things about this situation where, you know, already it's problematic just to be like having people in weird like border prisons. It's certainly problematic to be like having children who are separated from their families in these border prisons. But the idea that the US government is then going to like pay a third party to manage these things when like we have a responsibility to the people in these like border prisons to treat them. I respectfully is not the word that I want to use, not because I don't think that, but because it's not respectful to put people in border prisons. So we've already not treated them respectfully. But I mean, it is the American government's responsibility to sort of maintain, you know, a sort of humane version of this to the best of their ability. And this just creates like an additional middleman who has a profit incentive to abdicate more and more of that responsibility. Like I'm very into people abdicating responsibilities today. I don't know if you've noticed. I've said it like 100 times already on the podcast. But I just feel like when you add the for-profit layer, like not only is it problematic just because nobody should make money off of treating people like garbage, but additionally, a situation that is already so tense where we have taken people into captivity essentially, but into our care in the same way that, you know, people that are in prisons are wards of the state. We are responsible for them. We are responsible for feeding them. We are responsible for their health care. We are responsible for the costs of like maintaining them as people. And that is the same situation here. And that is also why for-profit prisons are bullshit, because you should not have an incentive to make money off of a system that is about maintaining a humane living condition for people. Like it just doesn't, it abdicates the responsibility to treat people well.
Yeah.
And you're already treating people badly if you've put them in weird border prisons. So
right. And also like this like for quite some time at the Trump administration and in through the whole Democratic primary process and everything, like this was a real rallying cry for Democrats. I mean, this was the catchphrase. If you knew nothing about politics, you might know, you know, don't put kids in cages. But I mean, it really was like, it was the thing that really sort of like one of the things that really rallied us into an anti-Trump frenzy. I mean, it was one of a million things, certainly. But I mean, it was one of the biggest things.
Yes.
So like, this has to be something, and I understand that it is one of the things that I think they want to deal with soon. I believe it's
it should be.
Like I said, I think there's a bill that has already been introduced by the administration. I mean, that's administration approved anyway. So like, I get it, it's important, but like, in the meantime, this just isn't the look.
No, or the idea. It's just not the thing. It's not the thing.
No.
Anyway, we have a real situation brewing in New York State right now. And it is as salacious as anything that you would expect from a third-term politician in New York State, because as we stated in the rundown, some advice from me to you is never run for a third term in New York. It never ends well. There is not a time that you should consider yourself important enough to do a third term in New York. You should take your 2 terms and get out of town.
Declare victory.
Declare victory, move on. Andrew Cuomo had the gall to think he was not just going to do a third term, but that he was going to run for a 4th term. And that is, I believe, when people were like, no. So here's what happened. Andrew Cuomo is a known asshole. So none of this will come as a shock to you.
I was talking to somebody, I was talking to Jeremy this morning, my boyfriend, about this scandal, and he was like, has he not had one of those? And
he has. Of course he has. Right. He's had tons of these because
he's just like the type of guy that like
a known asshole.
Yeah, it's like this tracks, right? That these numbers crunch here.
And this is already there's sex scandals in the New York State government are constantly happening. So like this is already like a problem in New York State. But Andrew Cuomo is a person that, whether or not you think he's a good governor, and most people are mad at him, just like everyone's mad at every governor right now.
Right.
But even people that think he's a good governor know he's an asshole. I mean, nobody thinks he's like a nice guy.
Which is fine, actually. I don't have a problem with that.
Right. I mean, he governs by assholery. That's his method. Like everyone, that's the one fact you know about him. In any case, on Wednesday, a former staffer of his from the Economic Development Office named Lindsay Boylan came forward with an accusation that she had been sexually harassed by Andrew Cuomo on a few occasions between 2016 and 2018. The splashiest of those accusations was that at one point he gave her an unsolicited kiss on the lips.
Yeah.
And Cuomo denied it. But then...
And that, by the way, just to clarify, I have a problem with. I said I don't have a problem with him being an asshole. I just meant generally, like, governors are probably, like, maybe not necessarily kind to everyone that comes into their sphere.
Right.
But you can't be giving unsolicited kisses to people. You can't be sexually harassing people. Right. Just for clarity.
I think that was clear. I don't think anyone thinks that you're in favor of governors sexually harassing people.
Like, you were like, he's an asshole, and I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. As a politician, many politicians are assholes.
Yeah, right.
Cuomo said that Lindsay Boylan's accusations were untrue. There are calls for investigations, whatever. On Saturday, a second aide came forward, and in the New York Times accused him of sexual harassment, saying that he had... there were a few incidents she described, but one in particular was he'd asked her really explicitly, like, about her sex life and whether she was in a monogamous relationship. Like, he basically asked her if she cheats on her boyfriend, and then if she'd ever had sex with older men, and the implication was kind of like, would she have sex with him? She was 25 years old. She left the Cuomo administration in November, and this was all happening during the COVID outbreak. So this is all happening in the last year. And, you know, she reported it. Everyone did their due diligence, or like everyone did their job, like recording it. They moved her to another office immediately. Like, so his staff wasn't necessarily negligent. And she, you know, says that. She says that, like, his chief of staff, who is also a woman, like, moved her immediately. His, she gave a statement to the special counsel, to the governor, and they, like, immediately asked her if she wanted to pursue it. Like, they followed all the protocols. She chose not to pursue it because it was a new job and she wanted to keep the job and she wanted to move on. So no further action got taken. But she decided to come forward after he was so dismissive of Lindsay Boylan's accusations. And she also notes, like, she's a sexual assault survivor and is someone who was active on the issue, like, in college and after college. And at one point she was going to get, in, like, May, she was going to give a speech about it to her former college, and, like, said, like, Cuomo was, like, oddly fascinated by it and kept repeating, "You were raped and abused and attacked and assaulted and betrayed," like, over and over, while, like, looking directly into her eyes. And she said in a text to a friend later that day, it was like he was testing me. And I just, like, I feel like this, as a behavior that Andrew Cuomo would do, not only tracks to me, but I can, like, feel viscerally how uncomfortable that would be, because he was theoretically saying it in the context he's trying to sort of make it seem like he supports her, but in doing it just, like, repeats over and over in any case, that account for some reason just, like, really creeped me out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
he also at one point had, like, a really pointed interaction with her about how much he misses hugging people. That was, like, kind of like TMI.
Sure.
In any case, Cuomo said that he released a statement saying that he thought he was acting as a mentor to her and had never made advances to her, but they're going to have to investigate it. And I think this will torpedo his plans to run again, which is really, I think, everyone in the state's goal. So hopefully this is the opening that we need to get some fresh blood into the governor's race, because I feel like what this really teaches us is not that Andrew Cuomo sexually harasses people, because that's information I believe we already could have known. It is that Andrew Cuomo should not run for office anymore and should go away.
Yeah.
But this is, like, you guys, like, Bloomberg, like, ruined his life with that it's the third term that made New Yorkers hate him. Bloomberg was oddly beloved in the first two terms. By idiots, but oddly beloved. Like, sure. You would hear middle-class white people complimenting him and be like, are we not being Democrats anymore? Or like, what is our plan
I know.
here? Like, he's
Yeah.
an asshole. Like, we know that.
Yeah.
And they would be like, yeah, but think about the parks and like, and then
Yeah.
the third term happened and everyone was like, enough of this guy. We can't with this guy anymore. Like
Yeah.
that, Cuomo should have known. He should have known because his own father was a 3-term governor, and his own father, who was a beloved politician in this state, got his ass kicked in his 3rd term. It's just a rule. The rule is you only do 2. That's just what
Everybody's
it
trying
is.
to be the one.
Everyone's trying to be the one. You can't be the one. And certainly, like, Andrew Cuomo is not going to leave office beloved the way his father, Mario Cuomo, was. Like, Mario Cuomo, over time, everyone forgave him. And then he's remembered now as, like, a great New York State politician. You know, he's sort of a real legacy kind of politician. Yeah. Andrew Cuomo's not going to be remembered that way. He's going to be remembered as the whiny son of Mario Cuomo who would not go away even when he sexually harassed people. In any case, moving on.
Yeah.
We
I think
passed,
in final news.
In final news.
Happy news.
Well, it begins with sad news, which is that we passed 500,000 deaths this week from COVID. So that was too bad.
That was bad.
The good news is that they approved a 3rd vaccine. Johnson & Johnson got approved. That's great for a number of reasons. 1 being that it's easier to produce. 2 being it's only 1 shot. 3 being that it
refrigeration.
doesn't. Right, it doesn't require some sort of like special freezer that Dippin' Dots has to rent to you. And so they think that they can have 100 million by the summer. That will really, I think, speed up our vaccination efforts. And just one note, because I know this is not being well represented in a lot of media, or it's not that it's not being well represented, it's just that, like with so many things, we're not scientists and they're reporting things to us as if we are. The vaccine, if you look at the data from its trials, looks like it's not as effective as Pfizer and Moderna, because you saw those 95%, protection ratings from them. And for Johnson & Johnson, you're seeing more like 60, 70%. Just as a note, though, like, it is as effective against serious illness and death, which is the things that you're trying to stop having. Like, getting some cold symptoms would suck, but the thing that you want is to not have people dying of COVID. So if you're offered the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, take it.
And I believe also, wasn't it 100% effective in, I don't think anybody was hospitalized either.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Or
and it was also,
at least it was very high, the percentage of only, or low, a certain number of people went to the
it was testing in different contexts too. Like, they tested in South Africa while that crazy variant was going on.
Yep.
And so people did get sick from that variant, but they didn't die.
Yep.
And dying is really the real problem.
Well, I know, and I feel like we're so far away now, I think, from some of the, well, not that far, maybe here in Los Angeles, but I mean, I think that we are now not, people are more worried about getting to go out and have dinner than they are hospitals overcrowding. Yeah. And I get that. Like, and that's sort of like a sign that, like, we are doing better, and we are doing better, and the numbers back up that we are doing better right now. But, like, the goal of these vaccines is not so you can go to pool parties this summer. The goal of these vaccines was to make sure that our healthcare system didn't get so bogged down that, like, you couldn't go to the hospital, like, or there were no hospitals.
Right. Also,
so, like,
the goal of the vaccine...
We have to think about what the goal of these vaccines was. And this vaccine specifically was the one that was, like, most propped up by Operation Warp Speed, because they were trying to find one that could be easily distributed, that could be easily produced.
Exactly.
So, like, this one was probably always going to have a little bit lower efficacy rate, because, like, they were trying to stick to these very specific terms that had been put on them by the government.
Yeah.
Because this is probably going to be the one that you are going to have to get year on year, because
it's going to be easy to produce, it's going to be cheap, it's cheaper to produce, all of those things. And also, like I said, the thing that you don't want as a person for yourself is death.
Right.
So if you get cold symptoms, that's not great. Nobody wants that. But the great thing about any of these vaccines is the times that you will not die from COVID. So in any case, I just feel like that's not been well represented in the news, because I've been hearing a lot of people be like, oh, I wouldn't want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I almost entered their trial before I got lucky and got a vaccine in, like, an extra dose situation.
Yeah.
I had been working really hard to get to something, because I was just like, I just want, like we all do, I just want to feel like something is happening, like there's a hope on the horizon. And so I almost ended up in their trial for Johnson & Johnson, but I didn't end up having to do it because I got the vaccine before they got back to me. But yeah, my point is, you're probably going to be getting the Johnson & Johnson one for the rest of your lives. So that's the one that's going to get us to herd immunity.
Get used to it. Right.
Because that's the one you're going to have access to.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
In any case.
Chances are that's what you're going to be getting.
Right. And also, it's great because you can do it. You only have to get it once. It's one needle.
I know. Well, that's an issue. My dad got his first dose, and he just got an email from the Arizona Department of Health that the second dose is in question. It's supposed to be on Tuesday. They don't know if they're going to be able to actually fulfill them.
This has been happening a lot. And I also think we've also seen some data now that kind of vindicates Britain's approach to delaying the second doses so that you can get more people vaccinated with the first. It turns out the first doses are pretty protective.
Well, that's what I said to him, because he was kind of panicked about it, and I sent him that study that I think people have been talking about. Yeah, it's like
turning out the second doses don't actually give you much more marginal protection. I have a suspicion that they're all going to end up being one dose soon.
I think so too.
But
or like one and a booster. It's definitely clear that the second full dose is too much, which is why people are getting sick. Also.
That's why everyone's getting sick from it. Yeah, it makes you feel terrible. Yeah. But yeah, in any case, get the vaccine when it's your turn. Also, one more point I want to make.
Oh, great. What is this? There's nothing more on the dock, guys.
I know. It's related to the vaccine.
Okay.
I've been seeing a lot of people, because there was such a concern about supply early on, there was a concern about people scamming doses off of things and jumping in line and whatever. And I understand that, and I certainly understand that as someone who essentially was able to do just that. But I feel like I've been hearing more and more people be like, well, technically I qualify, but I don't think I'm sick enough to really I don't want to take the dose out of the arm of someone else. If it is your turn, even if the reason is stupid, get the vaccine. Get it right away. Get it as soon as you can. Fight to get it.
Use whatever.
Elbow people out of the way if you need to.
Right.
Get the vaccine by whatever means you need to.
Right. Here in the middle of March in Los Angeles, they're opening it up to people who are immunocompromised. And I was like, by March 15th, am going to be immunocompromised.
Plan to be immunocompromised. Yeah. Like I've just been feeling, it's funny because it's all coming from people who are like incredibly pro-vaccine, but the logic has created an anti-vaxxer mentality where people feel stigmatized for signing up as if they're sort of like stealing something from someone. And because of that, I have friends who have delayed signing up at times where the supply is limited and they qualify, and they should go and get the vaccine because you're protecting the community when you have the vaccine too. So everyone should be fighting to get it. We should not be in a situation where people feel too guilty to sign up for it.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I've been seeing that a lot, specifically in DC for some reason, but also elsewhere, where people have been like posting on social media, like, should I sign up? I technically qualify, but the reasons are stupid. And I'm like, just go and get the vaccine if you can get the vaccine. Don't ask questions. If you
it helps everyone. It helps you, but you're helping everyone.
Exactly. You help everyone you're in contact with by doing that. And also, if the reason is stupid, then just consider yourself lucky.
I was going to say, it's not your fault the reason's stupid.
Right. You didn't make the criteria. What do you care? It's like, specifically, I've been seeing it a lot about the BMI criteria, because BMI is sort of like a faulty...
People were really mad that smokers in New Jersey, I think, could initially get it. But
if you smoke in New Jersey, get the vaccine.
Right.
Figure that you finally got something that's not lung cancer out of being a smoker. If you qualify for reasons that are entirely suspect, that's not your fault. In any case, I just want to say that everyone should do it as soon as they can do it, because I feel like
PSA.
I don't want people to feel stigmatized for signing up when it's their turn. And that so quickly happened. That turn happened so quickly where the criteria expanded, and then everyone was like, well, I don't want to be the person that looks like the asshole who stole the dose out of a grandmother's arm. And it's like, just get the dose.
We're beyond that.
Do it as fast as you can. In any case, that's the news. We will talk to you next week. And then
that's it.
The week after, too. Just forever. Just keep hearing from us.
Bye.
Bye.